Hey everyone, we will be there in a second. Just waiting for Sean to just... Hi everyone, we will be there in a sec. We're just waiting for Sean just to finish this and come back here. Just calm down. We will be there in a sec, but start typing in the chat room. You should be able to do that. Introduce yourselves to each other, and we'll see you in a sec.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Face me! Run!
You've clearly been taking stupid lessons since I last saw...
Everyone who isn't an American, drop your gun.
I didn't mean to do that.
Anachronistic electricity, keep out signs, aggressive stares. Has someone been peeking at my Christmas list? Up there. Give me a Dalek any day.
we're live.
We are live.
We're back. Been a while.
We are. It has been indeed. I'm just going to switch on this little camera. We always have a secondary camera here,
just in case.
And I've just realised I've not actually switched it on in all the rush.
And welcome to Talking Who. We've been gone for a while, since August, isn't it?
Actually, it has been since August, indeed.
Yes.
That's
we've
right.
in fact we've been gone for an entire season.
Of
Doctor Who,
which is bizarre.
An entire half season, actually, of Doctor Who.
They've been calling it half seasons here, but in America, they've called it the autumn season that we just had, and the next one will be the spring season, which I think is more sensible. Why can't you just call it's a season? It's a series.
Well, I think they're calling it that because a season is a block of filming.
Yes.
So it was all filmed together, but I mean, it's kind of interesting. How do you feel about the way they're doing? We're only getting 5 episodes and a special this year. And
8 is it next year or 7?
I think it's 8 episodes, then 2 specials next year.
That's right, the 50th anniversary.
Yes, but it's effectively we're a season down as a result of this. Then I understand in 2014 it goes back to normal.
You mean we're going to do 13 in a row?
Yes, apparently in 2014, which Matt Smith has signed to do the 2014 season as well.
I think you would be mad not to.
Well, there's different people's opinions on that kind of thing within the industry, but from a fan's point of view, absolutely. I mean, I think the longer an actor plays the Doctor, the more that they can mine out of the character, the more attached the audience becomes to them. But also you have a point where you're playing a character, you're getting a lot of publicity and a lot of interest in playing it, and you're potentially having to turn down other roles.
Yeah. But also, if he were to regenerate, for instance, in the 50th anniversary, the 50th anniversary would also be known for the new Doctor, and not necessarily for him.
All right,
that would be the person who would be remembered.
Well, there was a lot of. I mean, I remember when I was doing my last convention and speaking to a lot of the behind-the-scenes people. There seemed to be at that point a belief among people that Matt was going to regenerate at the end of the 50th special.
Yeah, and if he's not, then I'm happier that he isn't. Yeah, actually.
Well, I'm quite happy because a 50th anniversary special should be just about the 50th anniversary. Yes. And with a Doctor regenerating, you've got to spend time on that regeneration and kind of like a proper goodbye to that Doctor.
Well, I mean, let's talk about the rumours this week. Rumours of Rose, of Amy.
I haven't heard any of those.
You didn't hear that?
I haven't heard any of these rumours.
These were in the Daily Mirror.
Oh,
and
yeah,
the Mail.
It's very difficult to. Okay, what,
so these are tabloid rumours,
right?
Okay, so yes, so Amy Pond is immediately coming back for the 50th anniversary.
Oh well, Karen Gillan's already very vehemently stated that when she filmed The Angels in Manhattan, that was it for her. She said it would be too painful for her to come back.
And Rose Tyler.
Yeah. No, that I could see.
Yes.
Because Billy has come back.
And David Tennant.
And you want to know something? Wouldn't it make absolute sense to for a 50th anniversary special to bring back a variety of Doctors?
A variety would be better than just David Tennant.
Well,
David Tennant by himself to me would be a cop-out. A cop-out of a multi-Doctor story.
Very interestingly, Christopher Eccleston in interviews recently has suddenly become more pro Doctor Who in the way he's talking. Saying that he would have liked to have played the character for 3 or 4 years if he hadn't had a fallout with the production team. That there was a lot more he would have loved to have done with the character. What a great character it was to play. At the same time, Matt Smith in interviews has been saying he would love to see Christopher Eccleston come on the show. So there's been a lot of kind of like wording like that.
Will he, won't he kind of thing.
Won't he kind of thing. Yeah. And from what I understand, from what he said in interviews and so forth, it's becoming apparent that Christopher Eccleston has, had a fallout with certain people working on the show, decided to leave as a result of that. Those people aren't actually working on Doctor Who anymore.
Yes.
So theoretically, you could. I mean, I think it would be mad for an anniversary edition if they did not do it as a 3 Doctor story. Doctors beyond that, it would be great, but how much time of the story I mean, I thought the 3 Doctors was a brilliant story. I thought the 5 Doctors was a mess, because story-wise there was, you know, just trying to in 90 minutes to give a bit of story to each Doctor.
It became very episodic.
It didn't have any flow to it. It didn't gel properly as a story.
Well, the other name that was also mentioned amongst all the others, and is the most interesting of all, is Caroline Ford.
Well, that would be brilliant to bring Caroline Ford back, because then that harks back all the way to the very start of Doctor Who.
Yeah. And now, for those who are watching who don't know the character that Caroline Ford plays, it's Susan Foreman, which is her Earth name.
Yes.
We actually don't know what her Gallifreyan name is.
Well, we don't even really know, because Susan Foreman is the Doctor's granddaughter.
And that is established.
But, well, is she his Gallifreyan granddaughter? Is she a granddaughter that he adopted in his travels? We don't really know, because at the time when they were writing Doctor Who, the whole backstory of the Time Lords in Gallifrey didn't even exist. Caroline Ford has stated, though, that the entire time she played the role, as far as she was concerned and as far as Bill Hartnell were concerned, she was his granddaughter.
And I think she did play it that way. I mean,
they definitely both played it.
If the idea that she'd been adopted, you'd have probably had a bit more of a rebellious streak in her.
Yeah.
But this was definitely a love.
Yeah.
You know, a family love.
Yes.
Between 2 characters.
So having her back, I think, would make absolute sense of tying this, you know, Doctor Who back to its roots at its 50th and to tie it straight back to its very first episode.
So comments from the chat room. Matthew Barrett says, do you guys think Matt Smith could have a big career in film after Doctor Who?
I think he could have a huge career. I think he's shown himself as an actor. I mean, did you see the special, the TV movie he recently did where he was the Olympics rower?
That was, yeah.
And, you know, as an actor, he has shown himself to be a formidable actor.
Christopher in His Kind was a great film as well. But these are TV movies.
Yes, but
not cinema films.
I think, well, it depends on what kind of career he wants. If he wants to go into a career in like Hollywood film, if he wants a career on British television and British theatre, he's got one for the rest of his life. You know, at this point, he's set. I mean, this guy, you know, he'll make a fortune as an actor and will never be out of work. As to an American career, could he be Reed Richards?
But the thing is, he's got the kind of geeky longs. Well, the thing it could be Fantastic Four. Well, they're all after British actors to play these American superheroes at the moment, aren't they? The last Reed Richards was British, was Welsh. Was Welsh, indeed.
The thing though is about an American career, he's probably got a better shot than any other previous Doctor, because BBC Worldwide, starting with the episode The 11th Hour, really went out to do this massive push to launch Doctor Who in America, and it's kind of worked. I mean, you've for the first time you've had a Doctor being on American talk shows. There's actually
people will say Matt Smith and they kind of know who you mean.
Yes,
yeah.
And
if they say Doctor Who now,
for the first
general
time
public
ever,
seem to know.
For the first time ever, TV Guide are talking about putting Doctor Who on the cover. And Entertainment Weekly recently put Doctor Who on the cover. First time ever, America's top entertainment magazine put a British TV show on the cover. And if Doctor Who makes TV Guide, that will be the first time a British TV show has made the equivalent of America's Radio Times, and that would all be Matt Smith. So I think, you know, whether he would be able to establish an American career, that all really depends on the choices he makes when he goes out to Hollywood. But I think that if he was to go out to Hollywood now, I do think that you would have the agents and the film companies going, yes, we want to take meetings with you, we want to see you for this film or for that film. But it very much depends. The one problem he's got is that he's not conventionally good looking or physical in the way that but I could very much see him having a career like something like Ray Fiennes.
He's a
got
character
in the States.
actor.
Yes.
You know. Yes, yeah, that's probably a really good comparison, actually. Hello to Tony Lee, who's in the.
Oh, hello, Tony. Tony Lee, of course, used to write the IDW comic, and recently The first part of Assimilation has made the New York Times bestseller list.
Yeah. But we won't talk about that, will we, Tony?
Eagle Award winning Tony Lee.
Doctor Who Forever 100 asks, what companion would we like back?
Well, the companion I would most like to see back,
presumably.
we can't have back, and that would be Elizabeth Sladen.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, up until... It's kind of like interesting to what's happened with new Doctor Who. And it's difficult to say whether it's because of whether they are better or it's just a new generation. But right up until David Tennant and Billie Piper, if you'd stopped somebody in the street and said to them, the Doctor and their companion, the first people they would have thought would be Tom Baker and Elizabeth Sladen.
Yeah.
Now if you stop somebody in the street and said, who would you think of, the Doctor and the companion, they would think David Tennant and Billie Piper would probably be the first they come to.
Sure.
But I would love to see Elizabeth Sladen in it, but Elizabeth Sladen can't be in it, which is a terrible shame. I can't really think of any other companion. It would be great to see Carolyn Ford back though, as you were saying. That would just be a link.
If that's, you know, I mean, they're tabloid rumours, who knows any truth. But the fact that she was the only classic name mentioned amongst all those recent names. And it would be the most, because it is the biggest question mark about if the whole way that Doctor Who is now with Steve Moffat's idea, it's all about Doctor Who question mark.
Yes.
Carol Ann Ford is one of the big unanswered questions of Doctor Who question mark.
It would be nice if they're going to bring back our previous Doctors. As I said, I think it would be an absolute smorgasbord plot-wise if you tried to bring back everybody. But I think it would be nice to have at least one classic Doctor, and from the general public's perception, that would be Tom Baker.
And of course, he never had his moment in the Five Doctors.
No. The one problem with Tom Baker is, and that's the problem you probably also get with Colin Baker and Sylvester McCoy, is they look nothing like they did at the time. But there's something about Tom Baker. I don't know if you've seen him at conventions or read interviews with him recently, but he actually seems even more balmy than he's like the Boris Johnson of Time Lords. He's actually even crazier now than he was then. I mean, I don't think you'd need to write him any dialogue. Just let him in, put him on set, and let him improvise away.
And what about even just something like, you know, if there was like a glitch in the TARDIS console room and it just sort of switched back for a few seconds back to the old style. I mean, it's those kinds of things that you would hope.
You could hope,
perhaps they could think about.
That's the kind of thing you have to construct a whole set for. You know, if they had the set, fine. But if you don't have the set, that's like, you know, what, 50 grand to build something for a 1 second joke. You know, and we're talking BBC here.
So that pinging you hear noise is actually the
Elisar has a new iPad. Is this iPad 2 or iPad 3?
It's an iPad 3. It is on silent, but for some reason, whenever a new tweet comes in, it still makes a noise. I don't quite understand why. But thanks for all the tweets. A police box says the 50th anniversary will have to be a big extravaganza, but we'll also have to give progression for seasons after.
Any 50th, any anniversary story, as I said, I'd like them to look at something like the 3 Doctors, as opposed to, I mean, the 5 Doctors just felt like we're going to stick everybody in it, and every Doctor, every companion we can get, and then just kind of like work a plot line around that. Whereas I would like a 50th anniversary story to just be like the 3 Doctors, a good story on its own merits. I'd also like to see the bad guy be Omega.
Brad Renfro says, I'd like to see Ace again.
Ace that's
another big...
That would be a fantastic companion to bring back. And actually, if you had Ace and Carol Ann Ford, or if you had Sophie Aldridge, Carol Ann Ford and Rose Tyler, that would actually kind of like be the start of classic Doctor Who, the end of classic Doctor Who, and the start of New Who.
And you could forgive them for putting Rose Tyler in it. If they could give you some. But anyway, lots of ideas. We got the Gallifrey Times saying Donna Noble. But anyway, let's. So
who would you like to see as the villains? Who would I like to see them battling in that? I mean, do you think they should do something like, you know, it's the Daleks and the Cybermen and the Ice Warriors and the Weeping Angel and everybody, or do you think it should be like...
No, because they wouldn't do it right.
Yeah.
They just wouldn't do it right. It would, it's a story. If you were doing that, it'd have to be a story that could take its time to develop, and they just wouldn't do that.
Well, maybe what we will see is, maybe this is the way they've split the seasons. Maybe next season it will start to, build towards this epic special.
Yeah.
I said before, I don't know if you caught me, I'd like to see Omega as the villain, because Omega was the villain of the 10th anniversary story, and he was the villain of the 20th anniversary story.
I think Omega's a great choice, actually.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've got lots on the show. We're reviewing the last 5 episodes, the full season, as the BBC America calls it. We've got video blogs from It's Mother Who gives us Children Talking Who. We've got Barry Aldridge top 5 Multi Companion teams. And we've got Mary Tamm tribute from Annie Fairfoul.
And just very quickly, we'll give it a 2 or 3 second review. Did you check out The Ambassadors of Death?
I haven't yet. I haven't watched it yet.
On DVD?
No, I haven't seen the new DVD yet, so I haven't seen the new colorization or anything. So I'm looking forward to that.
Right. Well,
do you give it a thumbs up?
For me, Ambassador of Death is one of those stories that
it's a long one.
There's a lot of classic stories which, if you're only a fan of new Doctor Who, there's a lot of classic stories like the Robots of Death or Genesis of the Daleks or the Curse of Fenric, which I would say you've got to check this out. Ambassadors of Death, you've really got to be a fan of classic Who, because it's 7 episodes long and it really should have been 4 or 5. Lots of action in it, lots of great unit stuff. And
quite sort of Quatermassy as well.
Well, the whole of that season was very Quatermassy.
Yeah.
But I feel that the restoration team have done the best possible job you could. But really, their work with for people who aren't aware, right up until Invasion of the Dinosaurs episode 1, the BBC have a very patchy collection of Doctor Who episodes. They're missing a lot, and a lot of the Pertwee episodes they don't have in the original format it was screened in. And Ambassadors of Death, they've got the first part as it was originally shown, then episodes 1 to 6 only in black and white film, and an off-air video recording in colour. And they've tried to marry the two together. It's not their best result.
Well,
so I would actually say out of all...
They seem to have spent all their money on the Planet of the Daleks restoration.
Well, that one
and then realised they couldn't afford that every time.
Yeah. Well, but, the Silurians still looks pretty good.
Silurians
Demons is okay. Yeah. This one, I think the restoration team have done the best possible job they can do, but it still looks like you're watching it through mud.
Right, okay. So, but let's move on. Let's move on to the Asylum of the Daleks.
Yes, the Daleks, straight away. New season with a bang.
Of the
classic, and it's actually, it feels like not just a return of the Daleks, but a return more to a classic Dalek style story.
Yes.
In that it's not, these are the last Daleks, it's after the Time War, the Daleks are nearly, that kind of thing. It's back to the Doctor is against a Dalek empire.
Yes. And very much Dalek Empire, and introducing the Parliament of the Daleks.
Yes.
You kind of wonder then, if this is the Parliament, what is the new structure? There did seem to be very much an emperor.
Yeah.
Dalek.
Well, that wasn't so much. Yeah, that's he wasn't referred to as an emperor.
He wasn't referred
Dalek,
to.
and he wasn't even.
He was referred to as a prime minister.
Yes.
So whether there isn't actually also an emperor.
What I found interesting was, though, that they weren't on a planet.
They weren't on a planet.
That the Parliament of the Daleks is a giant spaceship.
Yes.
But it was also interesting that after victory of the Daleks, those 5 Daleks that got out of the Progenerator have managed to amass a massive empire from somewhere. So, but it's great to see the Daleks back as a fighting force.
Yes, and I mean, we'll talk about obviously the character of Oswin later, but the storyline where you have a planet where the Daleks send the Daleks that they're scared of, the ones who've gone a bit crazy, the ones who've gone a bit mad. But all Daleks are crazy, are they not?
Well, back in the 80s, when you used to have the Target novelisations, and Ben Aronovich did his novelisation of Remembrance of the Daleks, he literally describes the Dalek Special Weapons Dalek as this one that all the Daleks are frightened of, and it is kind of insane.
Right.
And lo and behold, the Special Weapons Dalek is in the Asylum.
Yeah.
There was a lot of play made of the fact that there was one of every type of, because throughout Doctor Who's 50-year history, it wasn't really until Russell T Davies with New Doctor Who
they became quite uniform.
In classic Doctor Who, every time the Daleks came back, there was little variations made to them. There were very minor.
The idea is they were
alterations
upgrading
always,
themselves all the time, always upgrading.
So there was apparently one of every Dalek there. There was a lot of play made of that, but once you watched the episode, it was really impossible to actually
that was very disappointing because it was because they kind of shoved them in such dark and covered them in dust, and whatever colours they may have had or that makes them recognisable, you couldn't.
I could really only recognise them. Like I could recognise some of Bill Hartnell ones because they didn't have kind of like panels.
They're slightly shorter,
and you know, I think I recognise, and I noticed the Special Weapons Dalek straight off because that's very different in its design. But beyond that, I really didn't notice.
I mean, it was disappointing, I suppose, that actually in the Parliament that they didn't have a bit more variety in the non-progenitor Daleks.
Yeah.
They were all back just to plain old gold Daleks.
But I think that's easier for the CGI to do.
Yeah, but CGI, it's just the computer say make that one a bit red. That, you know, it's just that, again, it's like if they're having if the progenitors are going to be there, and they were obviously there in the background, sort of where all the control room they would seem to be where the controls were. You know, and they've got colours. They've you know, there are rankings now. There are obvious rankings,
and this idea of
and it's a prime minister, so there must be ministers, and there must, you know, that.
There's also this idea of the Daleks can actually infect humans with nanites.
This was quite a new thing.
Well, it kind of like I felt just harken back to me to Robomen.
Back to the Robomen, sure.
In the Daleks' Invasion of Earth, the second Dalek story back in Bill Hartnell's day, the Daleks were turning the humans they captured into Robomen. It just seems to me like their technology from that
has been improved
and advanced.
No, it was a nice idea. I mean, what I really actually liked from that, I wasn't quite convinced that you had these perfect walking humans, which were just basically all Dalek inside.
Yeah.
But when they brought out zombie Daleks, I was kind of I could have forgive them because zombie Daleks. I mean, come on, how great! What an idea is that? You know, walking corpses of Daleks.
Yeah.
So you know, the Doctor lands on the planet, and you know, the first Dalek he comes across are zombie Daleks.
I also have to say, there's something about Russell T Davies's story. Not Russell T Davies. Stephen Moffet. Stephen Moffet seems to be the one writer who can really pack a lot into a 44-minute episode. And this felt like a story that, if it had been done in Russell T Davies's period, would have been a 2-part story.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how Stephen Moffat got. It almost felt like every second of screen time counted.
It did work as a 45-minute, but then at the same time, you know, do you want to spend a bit more time exploring this planet? But then you don't really have characters. There weren't any characters other than Oswin. It was just mad Daleks who just wanted to just shout. There was nothing for them to interact with.
What do you feel about this whole thing now that the Daleks have forgotten who the Doctor is?
I think it's interesting. I hope it does mean. I hope it means that actually the Daleks stay away for a bit again. We don't have them back. Have them back straight away
because it means Daleks coming back.
It means that they can go out and be conquerors, and that they have like a whole segment of space they now control.
I just kind of liked it that these are the Doctor's main enemies, and that they knew of and hated the Doctor as much as he. I like that as the conflict between the two of them. As for my own attitude on the Daleks, my thing is, well, you have the Klingons turning up every other episode of Star Trek, and every episode of Battlestar Galactica's got Cylons. I'm happy for I'm happy for a few Dalek episodes every season. I think the Daleks, I think they look great.
Yeah.
I think they are the most fun, exciting and scary villain in science fiction. and I'm happy to see them back every season. And you know, I'd be very happy if they were in the second half of next season, which I don't think they will be, but I'd be happy if they were back in the 50th as well.
Brad Renfro says, I love the fact that since Stephen Moffat has taken over, he hasn't completely destroyed the Daleks every time we see them in an episode.
Because it seemed to me when they did that in Russell T Davis's one, each Dalek story, instead of just being a proper story, the first half of the story had to explain how the Daleks had come back, and then the second half of the story was destroying them all forever. And it was almost like, you know, they were writing themselves into a corner.
And of course, the whole idea of when the Doctor would meet the Daleks in Classic period is that he wasn't meeting every Dalek.
Yes.
He was just meeting a particular group of Daleks who happened to arrive on that planet.
You couldn't have done, in Tennant's period, you couldn't have done a story like, say, Planet of the Daleks or Death to the Daleks. You couldn't have done that. And now you can.
Yeah.
You can just do, you know, where the Doctor comes across them. And it was really with Victory of the Daleks, it kind of like set the Daleks back to how they were in classic Doctor Who.
Yeah.
So you can just do a Dalek story any time without it being linked to the previous one and having to explain how they're back and everything. So
yeah, and I suppose the idea of having them forget him means that he can just come across different groups of Daleks, and if he defeats them, he's not defeating the entire Dalek race.
Yeah.
He's just defeating a group, because they're just going to have a battle and they're just dealing with him, with the kind of memories that they're going to have with him at that particular time.
Somebody's put Daleks shouldn't have nanotechnology. It's stupid. I don't see why Daleks should. I would have thought Daleks would have. They'd need nanotechnology as for themselves within their own
epic gaming
within
warriors.
their own casing.
Well, it's kind of. I mean, I think their casing is kind of nanotechnology, because we see it open up whenever they want to. It's kind of it's evolved.
Yeah,
the Daleks have evolved. We saw that from the Christopher Eccleston story Dalek, where the whole thing just now opens up.
Yeah,
it's not you just pop the head off, which is what you used to do.
Although a lot of this evolution is a lot to do with moving from a prop to CGI.
Yeah, but you fill in the science yourself.
Yes.
If they can do that, obviously it's some kind of nanotechnology, probably. You know. Epic Gaming Warrior says Asylum of the Daleks was a massive disappointment.
Well, straight underneath,
but
somebody
Tom
else
Greaves
has put
says,
Asylum of the Dalek was epic. And somebody, what is it?
The Gallifrey Times says brilliant episode, big surprise, but thought that September Christmas is a very long wait to find out more about Oswin.
Right. Now, the Oswin thing was really cute. I mean, her introduction there was a great surprise.
Yes.
Jenna Louise Coleman looks
Kept
fantastic.
that very well hidden, by the way, that she was in this episode.
She really had a lot of charisma on screen, although her costume was very Perry-esque, I felt.
Sure.
But suddenly being revealed to as a Dalek at the end, I was like, how was this going to play out when they introduce her character?
Well, of course, on IMDb, her character is listed as Clara. Now, whether Clara is just is going to be her actual name, or whether it's just a code name they've created for the scripts that people might see, but not necessarily the ones that are being used on set, who knows? I think whether Clara is her real name, we shall find out. But it just seems odd that you would have her play two different characters in the same season.
IMDb is
frequently
a
wrong.
notoriously wrong thing to.
So, you know, is Clara Oswin? Is Oswin coming back? I mean, they've established this nanotechnology and we do know that in certain types of Daleks have the ability to teleport themselves out or transmat themselves out. You know, and I don't think that's necessarily a technology they all share, but we have seen the occasional Dalek able to do that. We do know she's obviously a nanotechnology Dalek, because she was a human at first and was changed into one. Whether she can then reverse it and look like a human, and it really is Oswin who comes back. It'll be really interesting if the Dalek is a companion.
Well, we'll just have to see.
We just have to wait till Christmas, and it's a long wait right now. But hey, we're only 2 months away or something? 2.5 months away to Christmas. Are you looking forward to that?
I'm looking forward to the the Christmas episode.
Definitely. Yeah. So anyway, I think on the whole, aside of the Daleks, I really enjoyed it. I mean, there were...
I thought it was I thought it was a real good way to kick off a new season of Doctor Who.
You know, there was just some classic moments in it.
One thing that which really got me, I felt it was a bit vague over the whole nanotechnology that was infecting Rory and Amy.
Vague in the sense that
1 minute they're being infected by it, and the next minute they're
you just
not.
have to declare your love for each other, and suddenly it doesn't work anymore. Yes.
Yeah.
All you need is love.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cause, of course, that was. I mean, the BBC had released Pond Life, the 5-episode mini-series prior to, which showed them breaking up, and you know she was signing Amy Williams on the divorce papers, and they were actually in the process of a divorce. And I suppose that was really done just to make more sense of the love between them. Keeps the Nanites at bay. Who knows? Anyway, this moving on. This past July, we lost Mary Tamm, who was Romana 1.
Yes, a lot. It's actually been quite a sad
year, really,
on terms of Doctor Who.
No, it really has.
From the 70s, quite a lot have sadly passed on.
All before their time as well.
Yes.
Annie Fairfoul's latest video for us is our tribute to Mary Tamm.
A darling companion was how Tom Baker paid tribute to his first Romana, Mary Tamm. Hello, I'm Annie Fairfoul. In July, Mary lost her 1.5-year-long battle with cancer. She was only 62. Today we pay tribute to her with a look back at her time as Romana to Tom Baker's 4th Doctor. Mary had been a very successful film actor prior to being offered the part, so she was initially reluctant to accept it, seeing it as a bit of a step down in her career. But, with the urging of her close friend Louise Jameson, who had just finished playing the very popular Leela, a very successful audition with Tom Baker, whom she liked immensely, and the producer's assurances that Romana would be the Doctor's equal as an assistant, she happily relented.
I think I was created as an intellectual challenge, wasn't I?
To me.
To you, and it kept you on your toes for a bit, but we start off quite sparky, and then I think we kind of, by the end of the story, I think, we get quite chummy. Almost chummy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It didn't take as long, really, did it?
No, I got fond of you quite quickly.
And vice versa. Well, I was very impressed by your intellectual progress, wasn't I?
As Steve Hendry said of her performance, Romana was different entirely, different to any Time Lord and any companion that had been seen before. Played by the impossibly classy and elegant Mary Tamm, she was beauty, brains, and glamour personified. Her costume changes became as interesting as the form and location of each segment of the Key to Time itself. It was an exciting year for Mary in the TARDIS. She loved her chemistry with Tom and even K9. And she enjoyed having a great deal of input into her costume design as well.
Tara. Tahit?
But it was a challenge that ultimately wore thin, and she found herself faced with a decision by the end of the first season.
I think by about the beginning of the Armageddon Factor, I had realised that there was a certain repetition to it. The formula has to have somebody doing the explanation, and by default it therefore means that the character of the companion is always a little bit dimmer. The lack of initiative which then starts happening, and I think I could kind of see that the character had really gone as far as it would be ever possible to go with it. And that's when I thought, well, I don't really want to do another year, you know, of very, very hard work of just playing the same person who's never really going to change. That was the reason I left, you know, and people think there was more to it, but there honestly wasn't, you know. It's just that I'd done that length of time, and I wanted to go on to other things.
So she did, but that wonderful year never left her, and she will never leave our memories. Thank you, Mary. Thank you for Romana. Annie Fairfoul, out.
There you go. Thank you very much, Annie Fairfoul, for that video. Reminds you how she really was. I think one of them. She gets forgotten about when people say, "Oh, who their favourite companion was," but she was a stunner. She was a stunner.
I think one of the problems for Romana was she only did one season, and it was one season that was effectively one storyline.
Yeah.
So it took a while for it to get released on both video and DVD. And you know, you can really only think of her within. It almost feels like she just did one. It's a bit.
Yeah.
And then you also had Lala Ward coming in playing the character.
The same character
as well. Yeah. But I think Romana was a hugely important character because that was following on what was started with Sarah Jane Smith and then followed on with Leela, and then Romana was a natural progression of this companion who's the Doctor's equal. Very much right until that point, you'd had a lot of, you know, kind of like the screaming girl types, and you know, Romana was very much. I think that she felt in her own mind she was every bit as good as the Doctor, and theoretically she could have been more intelligent or more intelligent. It was just the Doctor had experience, whereas Romana was a novice in these situations.
Yes, a novice. Got some new followers. By the way, I want to just say thanks to all of you fans tonight who've been pressing the subscribe button. We've now gone over the hill of 1,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel, so that's really great. I'm very excited about that. If you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, please do. That really helps us out. Hello to PC Jonathan at PCJ_PC Jonathan, who's decided to watch Talking Who again tonight because he doesn't really have a lot else to watch while he's doing his work. So I hope we're a good distraction from work. And he carries on saying that what we talk about, the tabloid rumours, the more widespread version of IMDb rumours, both are produced by idiots and both believed by idiots. Cool.
Well, with a lot of the papers, Doctor Who stuff, you know, is of interest to readers.
Yeah, no,
so when they don't have any kind of like genuine facts being given to them by the BBC or proper sources, they'll just print any old rumours that they heard because, you know, that gives them a story.
And actors don't mind being rumoured because it just puts them in the papers again.
I remember the The Sun doing a full page news item. It took a full page for the news item that Ben Kingsley had been cast as Davros.
Well, wasn't Patrick Stewart was the meddling monk at one point as well.
I didn't hear that one.
Yeah, no, he was. That was, I think, for 2 seasons ago, apparently.
Right. Yeah.
I missed that episode, but you know,
yes,
it was a confirmed rumour.
I also do remember that Gillian Anderson was supposed to turn up in David Tennant's final story as the Rani as well.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I remember
that was in the Sun. I
mean, and she was actually also on IMDb as well.
Oh, was she?
Gillian Anderson. Yeah.
Well, that was the other thing to show you. Anybody can go on IMDb and put any old rubbish down. And I remember for about a week during Christopher Eccleston's period for the final episode of the series, somebody got in and put on IMDb that at the final episode Tom Cruise was playing the Mox of Bulhoo.
Anyway, oh, Tony Lee's back. He had to take a phone call. Hello, welcome back, Tony. But Brad Renfro on the subject of Romana says, Romana was such a great companion. It was great to see a companion that was on the Doctor's level, almost like an Irene Adler to Sherlock Holmes, someone who was an equal.
And then when Romana left, we got Adric.
Well, that's right, yes, we did, yes. Who was mathematical equal, though.
Yes.
At least he could do his maths.
Yeah. But the writers quickly forgot about that after the first episode.
Anyway, so moving on, episodes 2 and 3, Dinosaurs on a spaceship, and A Town Called Mercy.
Yeah, I mean, Dinosaurs on a Spaceship very much sounded like Stephen Moffat said to this writer, "I've got a great idea. Dinosaurs on a spaceship."
He'd just watched Snakes on a Plane.
Go away and write it. Yes.
His wife had probably just put on Snakes on a Plane and said, "Hey, have you watched this film?" He said, "No, that's it." I wonder what I could do. Dinosaurs on a spaceship.
Yeah.
So, for me, with a title like that, it just can't go wrong. I mean,
it was a fun episode.
It's dinosaurs on a spaceship.
Yeah.
And we got a bit of a freeze. Let's have a look. We're just going to check.
This is the problem when we go live.
No, the streamer's health is good.
Just press refresh.
Yeah. Okay. So we are still running. Sorry, it was just a bit of a buffer even on our end. Anyway, so you can't go wrong with a title like Dinosaurs.
Yeah,
the
idea of Matt Smith riding on a Triceratops.
So Aldridge saves all and crashes a spaceship into Earth, causing the extinction of the dinosaurs. But just before that happens, the Silurians get wind of this spaceship and build their own and create an ark of all the dinosaurs and at least one tribe of Silurians.
Yeah.
Do you think they should have at least referenced maybe that particular moment of the great cataclysm a bit more, considering that the Doctor actually was there at that moment?
Yeah, but I think there is always a thing of when they reference Classic Who, to reference it in a way that it doesn't confuse new viewers or make them feel, I think they always try and reference stuff in a way.
Could we have at least maybe have had a third eye Silurian in the video to make it?
That's not going to happen.
At least sort of reference to the fact that these are maybe like an older version of the Silurians.
I mean, it's a bit like in the episode The Idiot Lantern.
Yeah.
When the Doctor was climbing up a radio telescope, he was supposed to turn around and say, the last time I did this, it didn't go so well. And they cut that out as being too much of a reference. So, they are I think they are a bit worried at times about making references to continuity which will put viewers off. You have to be very... I'm doing Sylvester McCoy's
But they had Saigons under the Savoy.
Yeah.
Go figure.
And it's just referencing stuff in a way so that, and I just I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe the writer even forgot about Aldridge.
So I think we're in 24th century. Spaceship is hurtling towards Earth. It's going to the Indian Space Center want to blow it up.
Yeah.
And the Doctor, along with Queen Nefertiti, actually, you know what they're doing with the Doctor? They're creating a lot of opportunities for Big Finish to write up tons and tons of audio adventures if they can get.
I was actually thinking
Matt
about this,
Smith,
whether
Karen,
they don't need Karen and Rory. How many adventures? It's made it very clear that the Doctor, the 11th Doctor, has been having a lot of adventures without the Ponds,
with other
which have
companions,
not been screened. And whether it's Big Finish or whether it's going to be novelizations or comics or whatever, there's huge areas where they can very easily slip in new stories. Big Finish has a lot of problems trying to fit in a story continuity wise in Peter Davidson's era or something like that. But this is easy.
They've got carte blanche,
this is carte blanche to do anything with it. And I like this. I sometimes think it's a bit ridiculous when you're watching, say, if you watch Peter Davidson stories, and the way they're done, it's almost as if one story flows into the next, which is interesting. But to think that the Doctor maybe only has 3 years in that, whereas you think the Doctor may live several hundred years before he needs to regenerate, and you do wonder in this season how long he has been the 11th Doctor. It must be at least...
It's a while. And actually, I mean, to me, Amy's timeline is really interesting because I think, when it comes to the end of this season with Angels of Manhattan, which we'll come to later, it's, it's like, it's 2012. But it doesn't feel like it could be 2012 unless, of course, the Doctor and Amy's story has started actually a few years ago and is actually running concurrently with David Tennant, Rose and Martha as far as our Earth years is going, because it should be something like 2020 by now, as far as where Amy and Rory, because it just seems to be there's these huge gaps that they don't see him, and they're referencing that they're just not seeing him for months, maybe even years. But anyway, going back to Dinosaurs on the Spaceship. So the Silurians build a spaceship, send them out, and we have the wonderful actor. What's his name?
What, you had the guy from Game of Thrones?
Yes,
and
yes.
Harry Potter. I don't know what he's called.
I do know what he's called because he's one of my wife's favourite actors.
I'm just like, oh, that's the dude from Game of Thrones and Harry Potter. But then again, virtually every actor on British television has been in either Doctor Who, Harry Potter, or Game of Thrones.
So, anyway, he's collecting things and he discovers there's dinosaurs on a spaceship.
Yes.
Kills all the Silurians in order to try and steal the spaceship, but he can't steal it. It's just it decides to head home and it's going to crash. So the Doctor has to save the dinosaurs, essentially, you know. Which actually wasn't the reason why he was telling the Indian Space Center not to blow him up, because actually this is of value to Earth because it's their own. You know, these are Earth creatures.
Yes.
In there.
And who doesn't want to see dinosaurs?
Who doesn't want to have? You know, they could have. Hey, they could have created a real Jurassic Park. You know, they could have just said, "Hey,
not
look."
that I would want to see a velociraptor.
But anyway, by the end of the story, of course, the dinosaurs are on a planet that has been renamed Siluria. But it was you know what? It has its problems. Mitchell and Webb, a bit too Mitchell and Webby as robots, but they were kind of Hitchhiker's Guide style robots. You know, that sort of.
You've got to remember, Doctor Who is playing to all ages, so you need that thing in any episode that's a bit of fun for the kids as well. So, and nothing's more fun than either dinosaurs or comedy robots.
Yeah, Queen Nefertiti. You know, would she have really cared that a Triceratops would have been killed? She's, you know, she probably wouldn't have cared, but in this story, she has to.
Yeah.
You know what? You could pick so many different but you know what? It's just a fun romp. This story.
Yes.
It's just a fun adventure, and you know, and I just loved it just for that. And I didn't really care that it had problems. Whereas A Town Called Mercy, I think the problems with it were just too obvious, and it seemed like this was not even a story that could stretch out 45 minutes. It's just like this should have been 25 minutes.
Well, it looked good.
It looked great. But
it was quite interesting. We were reviewing. If you watched the last, was it the last or the previous to last episode
with the gunslingers?
And we were talking about, was it the gun? I thought it was the gunfighters.
The gunfighters.
The gunfighters. The William Hartnell story. And I was pointing out that every time they were in a building on a set, it looked great.
Yeah.
But the minute they walked out onto the streets of Tombstone, it looked so obviously that they were within a set, it killed the illusion. This looks fantastic. It reminded me a bit of the fires of Pompeii, in that I felt that they'd really done something which, you know, it felt like something you'd expect to see in a film in terms of the quality of the set and the costumes and the whole feel of the Old West. And it's not somewhere the Doctor's really been before. He's only ever been there once before. So I was quite excited to see the Doctor travelling to cowboy periods. It just wasn't a very exciting story. There was even, they had Ben Browder guest starring in it, and most of our viewers, I'm sure, will know Ben Browder's a bit of a sci-fi icon. As John Crichton in across 4 seasons and 2 TV movies of Farscape, and then he replaced Richard Dean Anderson as the lead on Stargate, and he actually seemed kind of wasted. In this.
Sure. I mean, it just didn't hold up, and it was just. I actually got bored. And I think I've actually watched it twice, because I remember the first time I actually fell asleep because I was watching it like 10 o'clock at night, and I thought, it just wasn't interesting enough. It just felt, even though it was a great location, it looked good, it just felt small.
Well, ultimately,
maybe they were just saving.
Ultimately, whatever should have been learnt from classic Doctor Who is, no matter what your production values are, the most important thing is the script. And I felt this was the other way around. It was fantastic production values with a very weak script.
Yeah.
And plus Ben Browder with a really silly moustache.
Going back to Amy's timeline, Doctor Who Media reminds us, don't forget there's a huge gap between God Complex and closing time, many, many years in there. And continues saying, I think he's been the 11th Doctor for at least 200 to 300 years.
Well, in
because obviously between
what was the end of the last what was the last season for the climate episode end of the last season?
The Wedding of River Song.
Wedding of River Song. There's the impression
he's 200. He's 200 years.
Yeah.
There's a 200-year gap between Impossible Astronaut and for him at least anyway. But certainly Amy, and I think who may have been like about 21, I think, when he first meets her in the 11th hour.
Well, she's about 5 when she first meets her. But
when he first meets her as an adult, has got to be at least in her 30s by now. Yeah. Because there has been these gaps.
But that's something that Stephen Moffat, if you look at his writing, and it very much starts in the second season of New Who with The Girl in the Fireplace, he very much likes to play about with time. The Doctor's a time traveller, so time doesn't run in the same way. The Doctor can land in your living room, come out, say hi to you, pop back in the TARDIS, go away and live for 100 years, do stuff, and then come back 5 minutes later for you. And I think that Stephen Moffat's really fascinated by that and playing around with that.
But also it's building up to them leaving, and so it makes much more sense now that because it's happened over a longer period of time, they just sort of don't, even though they like being around him, they just don't necessarily want it anymore. Yeah. They actually want something else. Whereas with Rose Tyler, she was only, she's literally in it for a few months of her of her life, and so therefore it's still the greatest thing that's ever happened. But no, it was a shame that Tamm called because the trailer that we showed just before the show, of course, was the American trailer for the season, which heavily focused on a town called Mercy more than anything.
That's because they're trying to flog it to the Americans, aren't they?
Because it's full of American accents and fake American accents. But it just, I know following it on Twitter, some people like this one more than Dinosaurs, and there were others who like Dinosaurs and not this one. I'm on the Dinosaurs was fun, but this one just didn't hold up, and I didn't even like the character of the gunslinger, to be honest. I just thought it's just
it was a very good makeup job.
It was a great makeup job, but it just looked still.
I'm sure character options will have the action figure out within their next wave of action figures.
In 2014 or whatever it is, however long they take. No, it just felt like it was, the design was just a bit sort of 1980s Charles Band sci-fi. Let's try and do the Terminator kind of thing, and it's the B-movie version of the Terminator, and it just kind of looked a bit like that.
Terminator was a B-movie already.
It was, yes, that's true. But anyway, but here we are, Tony Lee. I have to say I enjoyed Mercy much more than Dinosaurs.
Everybody has their own opinion on stuff, but I mean they very much were exactly, both of them were playing to the audience, as it were. One's Dinosaurs, the other's Cowboys. You're already going to get an audience's attention with either of those.
Indeed.
And actually going back to classic Doctor Who, in both cases, Dinosaurs and Cowboys are things that they had tried in classic Doctor Who and hadn't been able to properly do because of budget limitations. So it was nice to see them being done properly.
And I guess this gunslinger they can come back to, because presumably he's still standing on a rock somewhere.
Whether they will come back to it, that's another thing.
Unless units have found him and locked him up.
I mean, there's a lot of things they're supposed to come back to. The Mandragora Helix is still supposed to be turning up. There's still supposed to be an arc of the last of the Zygons on their way to Earth.
Gallifrey Times says, I thought that Mercy was a brilliant episode and again was a bit wacky. You know what? It is one of those things that
that's the great thing about Doctor Who. Each episode is so different that everybody has their own preference.
But we do have some tweets as well.
And I respect everybody's opinion, just as long as they don't like Time Lash.
What are we else? Okie dokie. Sorry, I just had it and it's just disappeared. Anyway, I'll come back to it. So our next video is from It's Mother Who, and it is our second ever Children Talking Who.
Still my favourite Doctor Doctor's David Tennant because he is very cool and very intelligent. My favourite Doctor is Matt Smith because he's a bit crazy and so am I sometimes. My favourite episode that David is in is the one where he regenerates into Matt because it has a bit of craziness as well as just being David. My favourite episode with my favourite Doctor in is probably when Matt meets Amy because he eats fish fingers and custard. Favourite companion was Martha because she was a doctor and I like doctors. And she changed into a spy.
Something like that.
My favourite companion is probably Rory. Because he's a bit mad sometimes. My favourite alien is probably that red guy who was like a cactus but was actually a robot and was a bomb. Something. But he was on the one with the flying Titanic.
Banacafalata.
Yes! It doesn't matter. The Weeping Angels! That's why there's a sticker. Oh, the Weeping Angels. Don't. Mine's probably the Weeping Angels as well because they kind of creep me out sometimes. Even the babies. I haven't seen that one. Well, I did. Bit of extra footage here. I don't know why I'm doing. So, Doctor Who is amazing. Go watch it, please. Yeah. Start watching it at Christmas maybe because it's just got like a massive thing. You're probably going to regenerate in it. If you don't know what generation is, he sort of skips death. It's like short. He like red, orange glow stuff come out of him. Yeah, and he regenerates. Like when he regenerates, stuff happens and he gets a new body.
Henry and Nathan, you guys are stars. That was great. That's Henry and Nathan are its mother who's own boys. Big Doctor Who family there, which is great because that's obviously what Doctor Who does. Yes. It brings families together.
Now, talking of families, that kind of brings us on to the power of three.
The power of before we go into that, Tony Lee wants to point out that. Again, he did both with the IDW comic series, meaning Dinosaurs and Westerns. It's like they've read issues 6 and 9.
And he also did Jack the Ripper.
Jack the Ripper, he also did Jack, which is actually a great story. And anyway, yes, so the power of three. So we've had our adventures.
It's kind of actually with
past and present.
Yes, bringing in
now we
Rory's,
sort of come back down.
Now bringing in Rory's family, I thought that was kind of interesting because it had taken so long, really. Because what's been interesting on New Who, the one I feel the biggest difference with New Who compared to Classic Who is that in Classic Who the Doctor meets a companion and they go off on their adventures.
Away, yeah.
On New Who, we've actually got to know the families of all the companions.
Yes.
Rose Tyler's mum and dad. We met Mickey Smith's mum,
and how people feel about
his aunt. Actually, in a who looked after. Was his aunt or his grandmother?
His
grandmother looked after him. Yeah. And we meet her in a parallel universe. Then we meet Donna Noble's family.
Dad, yeah.
We meet Martha Jones's family. And we meet we meet Amy Pond's family, but we haven't really met Rory's family until this season.
Yeah,
we didn't even really see much of them in the wedding.
No, not at all. And he, Rory's dad is introduced in Dinosaurs on a Spaceship in a fantastic way, actually, with the TARDIS materializing around them and essentially kidnapping Rory's dad, and forcing him into an adventure.
Really, I mean, I felt that was a trick that Moffet had previously used in Blink.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they've established it now. I was never really... I mean, that was one thing, actually, going back to Asylum, the Daleks, that I didn't like about the ending is him being able to just use a standard teleporter on a planet and being able to go into the TARDIS directly.
Yeah.
Because the TARDIS is supposed to be impregnable, and presumably that would also mean Dalek technology, which is what that teleporter is, would be, it should be impregnable. But again, it's like, press the button on your amazing sonic screwdriver and anything is possible.
There's things that they've said that the TARDIS can do, which does in one episode and then
contradicts the next.
Doesn't in the next. I mean, the TARDIS is supposed to have a temporal state of grace.
Yeah.
Which means you can't fire weapons in them, and then you've got Captain Jack and Daleks firing weapons at each other. Things like that. So
anyway. But the power of 3. Okay, so we come back down to Earth.
Yes.
We meet Rory's dad for the second time, who is actually a great character.
Yeah.
And
it's a good actor playing him.
It's a great actor who I remember from the days of the Fast Show.
Yes. I think everybody remembers him from that.
And is known to be a comedy actor. He's known to be a comedy actor. But he does it really, really well. Rory's dad is a great character, and it's almost a shame that we're probably not going to see him again. But at the same time, you've got the foreshadowing of the end of the Williamses, or the Ponds, however you want to call them, with the conversation between Rory's dad and the Doctor about what happens to companions. Will they get home safely? But you've got the cubes appearing everywhere, and you've got, again, a story that takes its time. It happens one episode. It actually happens over a period of 12 months.
Yes.
And the Doctor goes off for adventures and comes back. So there's more Big Finish stories there, while the Williamses stay behind. So he could have had a whole new companion by that by the time he comes back.
I'm sure that if Big Finish get the license for Matt Smith to do some, he actually will have a few new companions.
Well, I think Big Finish recently announced. I think they've got another at least 3-year contract. I think it is. Or
yes, but it's only on. They can only do stuff
on the classics.
On the classics, and I have a friend who actually writes on Big Finish audio, and as I'm sure you can understand, any story has to be sent off to the BBC at script staging for approval.
Yeah.
And if you make any references to stuff in New Doctor Who, it is cross. Because apparently he was doing a Paul McGann one and made a reference to a planet which was referenced as part of the Time War, and him kind of like setting up that Paul McGann's character is getting ready for the Time War, and that was like delete. You're not allowed to do, but that could all change when Big Finish come out, or the BBC. The BBC have done a few of their own audios.
Well, that's true,
as well. So who knows?
They had their own Tom Baker series running concurrently with the Big Finish
what even
ones.
about? I'm quite surprised they've never done this really. How about more animated stuff? They did do 2 animated adventures for David Tennant, not particularly well animated,
awful ones.
But there's also some animation going around on YouTube of Doctor Who the anime, and I was astonished when I saw that the BBC didn't snap that guy up and have him make a 90-minute special Doctor Who the anime.
Well,
but he has been snapped up to do Reign of Terror.
He was snapped up by 2 Entertain at least.
Yes.
But anyway, going back to the Power of 3. So you got these cubes arriving, and then we have the introduction, of course, of Kate Lethbridge Stewart, or Kate Stewart, as she introduces herself. I think this was a really nice touch. She didn't get to do much other than,
but she's established.
But she's now established.
Yes.
Yeah, and you know what? This is if the Doctor is about to disappear off there, find new companions. You've now got a character from home. Especially if the new companion does end up being alien in origin, you've now got a character at home with Kate Stewart who can bring him back. And
we did have a reference last season to Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart.
We did
as well.
Absolutely. So UNIT is going back to its roots.
Yeah.
We don't have the red-hatted evil unit that had to be established because they needed a foil for Torchwood in the spin-offs for Russell T Davies. You've now actually got UNIT, I think, is what they're supposed to be.
I never really saw UNIT as a force of evil or anything
well,
like that.
they did that whole story in Torchwood with, I think, it wasn't them who imprisoned the Torchwood people because they'd gone all sort of like post 9/11, hadn't they? And they did like a whole sort of, they've got powers now to just arrest people and put you in a black cell, but no one will ever see you.
But I have that much interest in Torchwood.
So anyway, we're sort of establishing UNIT again, I think, which was kind of good. And
I think something like UNIT, when you're doing a show like Doctor Who, only makes sense because Earth is being, especially 20th century Earth, now 21st century Earth, is being invaded on such a level and such a public level.
Yeah, I mean, you can't. People. I mean, I suppose that's the thing with Rory's dad. He just sort of goes in the TARDIS, turns up in a spaceship, and he sort of understands it. He sort of joins in quickly, and it's like, well, he would do because Earth now must establish that there are alien races.
Yes.
And that there are invaders, and there must therefore have to be a military force that is established
ready to deal with this
to protect you. And the whole idea, I guess, with the way that it wanted to torture it, it's all secret, and it's like, well, why would it be secret now? Everything's out in the open.
Especially when you think of stuff like the Christmas invasion, or when the Daleks and the Cybermen were having their war across Canary Wharf and stuff like that.
It makes no sense
that people would be aware of. There's in Doctor Who's time anyway. There's so you would need a military force like UNIT that is ready and getting prepared to deal with any situation like this. So it only really makes sense.
And how many times has London been invaded?
Yeah.
And that's been established for a long time.
Well, why is it every time a giant monster is unearthed in the sea, it heads straight for Tokyo? It's like alien invaders.
Is it time that Doctor Who does London, a Godzilla story?
Alien invaders attack London, Godzilla's attack Tokyo, and supervillains and all the superheroes battle it out in New York. I think they've actually commented on that several times in Marvel Comics, why everybody just does everything in New York.
So Power of Three, and then the story continues, and there's a portal to a spaceship, and there seems to be an alien character on there who is from mythology, from the Gallifreyans, and it just sort of ends. Which was a shame because actually it built up really, really nicely, and to me the reveal of the bad guy at the end was actually disappointing. It's just like, it's just another alien with two eyes who talks creepy, but he's actually not there, he's just a projection, so he's out there, he's still out there, so presumably he's going to come back maybe.
Well,
the ending just didn't work.
Doctor Who, one thing's for me a bit of a failing of new Doctor Who is establishing new villains. And I think one of the big problems I had, not short term but long term, with Russell T Davies was very much in classic Doctor Who, if you had a cool villain, you establish this cool villain, and the writers and the production team would always leave it open for them to return.
Yeah.
You had some that would return, like the meddling monk who came back, and it was always left open for him to come back. At another point, it was left open for the Celestial Toymaker to come back, and even just moving down across, like Broton on the Zygons, the Mandragora Helix. There's all these villains who actually never did return, but it was still left open for them to return. And there was a sense if you did have a cool villain, they could come back. Whereas in New Who, they get rid of villains quite quickly. And I felt Lady Cassandra, I felt she could have been a fantastic villain to have kept on Doctor Who, and they got rid of her very quickly. I felt Dalek Sec would have been a great character to have kept as like the new equivalent of Davros or something like the new leader of the Daleks, and in his second story they get rid of him. And I just feel that it would be nice to have the Doctor to have a rogues gallery, as it were, that's, you know, ready for him to battle at some point. And also establishing, you know, a villain from Gallifreyan mythology. Is that sort of like so they can now establish other villains from Gallifreyan mythology? You know, could we be seeing Omega?
In this particular story, just having that type of character, which is, you know, going back. So for the Doctor, this is quite a big thing. It's just like, oh, we'll just throw him in at the end. He says goodbye, and that's it. And it's like
one of the problems.
It's the wrong story for that type of character. You know what I mean? And again, it's just like, let's press a button, and it's all fixed.
Yeah.
It's the we don't really know how to end this syndrome of the 45-minute.
Yeah.
Which, you know, sometimes I get it right and sometimes I get it wrong. And this is actually a really good episode up until, I think, the ending. And of course we do have the foreshadow that you know you've got the conversation between Rory's dad and the Doctor.
Now, is it something? That's another thing. Taking New, keep on harping on about comparing New Who to Classic Who. In New Who, they'd have their adventures, and then you get to the final episode of a character or whatever. But it seems to me that now they love to foreshadow a character leaving for months beforehand, and a character leaving is no longer a surprise. And it seems to me, from Rose Tyler leaving to the 10th Doctor's regeneration to the Ponds leaving, it's like they have to talk about this for episodes months before it actually happens. And even actually in the Wedding of River Song, they start foreshadowing the 11th Doctor's regeneration, which is at least 2 bloody years away.
Brad Renfro says, thought Power of 3 was a good episode but a terrible ending, felt very rushed. Andy Oliver 232 says, the Power of 3 was meh. Rounded off the Ponds character arcs well, with the slow invasion being a template for their character developments, but it was dull and Kate Stewart wasn't utilised at all. Ferry Monkey for Boys. Ferry Mum for Boys, sorry. I find that the more classic Doctor Who I watch, the more I appreciate the new Doctor Who. Unit was great to see again. I think Tony Lee's got a conversation going on, I think, about the temporal state of grace.
The temporal state of grace, I believe, was first referred to in The Hand of Evil.
Okay.
In which the Doctor has got Eldrad on the TARDIS, and the Doctor says to Eldrad, you can't attack me on the TARDIS because we have a temporal state of grace.
TARDIS Impala says, well, the temporal state of grace things was a clever lie, as said by the Doctor to Mel.
Not necessarily, because then in Earthshock, a Cyberman turns up and they're firing a gun all over the place. But then, was it in the start of Arc of Infinity? Nyssa says to the Doctor, you've got to fix the temporal state of grace because we had a Cyberman running around firing their cybergun all over the place. So that kind of like established that the temporal state of grace is on the TARDIS, but it doesn't always work. But of course, the Doctor could be lying sometimes when he says
you know what, I think the Doctor lies. He lies a lot,
but sometimes we do see the TARDIS do something, and then a few episodes later it just can't. What was it in? Was it the Crotons? There's a landslide which hits the TARDIS, and the TARDIS dematerializes and it moves somewhere else, and the Doctor says the TARDIS has got a preservation mechanism. And then in Destiny of the Daleks, a landslide hits the TARDIS, and the TARDIS just stands there, he stays there, and doesn't do anything.
Or Peloton when it falls off a cliff. I think.
This was, in during when John Nathan Turner in the 80s was the producer of Doctor Who. They had a guy on Doctor Who, Ian Levine, whose job, he was unpaid job, what he used to do was read through episodes and would bring up continuity errors. And they also had a similar thing on Star Trek The Next Generation. There was a guy called Richard Arnold whose job was to read through every script and to bring up continuity errors.
Well, I mean, they've got the fans for that nowadays.
No, but they bring up the continuity errors after they've happened. The whole point is to I always remember watching it. It's on the DVD for Warriors of the Deep.
Yeah.
Where Ian Levine, the continuity expert on the show, said that when he got the scripts for Warriors of the Deep, he highlighted over 100 continuity errors.
Well, there you go. Anyway, we've got some tweets that have been sent in over the last few days about the whole series. At Geronimo Seb says the series was over too soon.
Well, it was only 5 episodes. It's that's.
We will be looking at the Angels of Manhattan in a bit. At Blue Box says the series has been epic, moving, and dramatic. At TARDIS BlueNet says fantastic so far. At Galapen484 said frustrating, funny, final.
Lots of Fs.
And at Hooligan says emotional, cinematic, and disappointing. Anyway, we've also got more in the chat room, and the Gallifrey Times says the Power of Three was also wacky. For example, when the Doctor was playing on the Wii.
I think Doctor Who is supposed to be wacky. I mean, part of the fun of Doctor Who is so much sci-fi is so poo-faced.
Yeah.
And the fact is that Doctor Who can be quite a lot of crazy fun, and I think that's the appeal of the Doctor to kids, that the Doctor is so anarchic.
Well, indeed, yes, absolutely. You actually, I think the whole idea is he's got this sort of unpredictable thing. You know? It's like he might like something, he might not like something. He might just want to just throw himself into something. And
just as long as he wasn't playing the Wii Doctor Who game, because that's torture I wouldn't want to inflict on anybody.
Oh, we didn't actually see what game he was playing.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't quite.
That's a question. That's a question to everybody. Wouldn't it be great for the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who if we finally got a good Doctor Who video game?
And what type of game would it be?
Well, the problem,
is it like a Lara Croft style? You're standing behind the camera's behind the body.
The problem with Doctor Who, in terms of video games, is the Doctor's non-violent. So you can't have him running around with a gun. They're not very popular now, but I think in the 90s it would have been great if they'd done one of those point-and-click adventure games that people like LucasArts and Sierra used to do so well. That would have, because what the Doctor is, he's a problem solver,
which is a sort of thing they do on the iPad.
Idea, yes. He comes in, sees problems, thinks them through. I don't know. I would love to. One thing I think would be fun would be like a 3D one of those kind of like first-person perspective games like Doom or Halo or something like that, or GoldenEye, but done where you're a Dalek.
Well, that's the thing.
And you've got all the heads-up display of the
Perhaps
Dalek.
you don't actually have the Doctor in the game.
Yes.
It's just a Doctor Who universe style game.
And a Dalek would be a lot of fun going around, and you could blast whatever you wanted.
You could be a Dalek, you could be a Cyberman, you could be a Sontaran, a Zygon, and it's just almost like a sort of Galaxy Conquer game or something like that.
But I mean, the Doctor Who, the universe,
and actually the Doctor is in it, but he's in it as a computer character that tries to foil your plans, and you actually have to get around it.
I think one of the problems you actually have with license-based computer games, one of the reasons why there's so few good ones, is by time the computer games company has paid for the license, they don't actually have much money to spend on anything else usually. There's been very few good ones.
But there is a 50th anniversary Monopoly coming out soon.
Fantastic.
So you can have that instead. So let's go on to our final of our video blogs, and of course we are going back to Barry Aldridge with his top 5.
Was top 5 this time?
Well, we've had Amy and Rory. We've had Amy, Rory and his dad. We've got a multi-companion team. So he's going to look back at his top 5 favourite teams.
Okay.
Everyone's done top 5 companions, but what about top 5 companion teams?
Hello everyone, welcome to another Talking Who Top 5 with me, Barry Aldridge. It is good though to be back though doing another top 5, and this time though I'm going to be doing a top 5 on multi-companions for the Doctor. In other words, it's not one companion, but it's more than one companion with the Doctor. So sometimes though the Doctor travelled with 2 companions, and then once or twice 3 companions, which I know it's kind of shocking, but it actually happened, and it happened quite a bit during the classic series, and it is happening though nowadays. So here we go. So here we are. Here's my top 5. At number 5, During the 9th Doctor's era, yes, in the New Who, there was multi-companions. And, yep, the very first one was definitely of Rose and Captain Jack from episode 9. You know, the empty child all the way up to the end of series 1. What I liked about it was that Captain Jack and Rose, they would play some constant flirting every now and then, and it really jarred the Doctor a little bit, but it was actually really cool, and they really helped out the Doctor in different ways. Like Captain Jack can help out in a certain other way, and that, you know, where you first meet him, he's very, very, you know, not brave, but then by the end of it, he becomes very, very brave in that. And I think that's really cool. And I absolutely love their combination of them two together, trying to figure out what's actually going on. And I think it's just wonderful adventures, though, just seeing both Billy Piper and John Barrowman, you know, together and that, with Christopher Eccleston's Doctor playing it really, really smoothly and very fantastically well on that. At number 4, how can you forget about the original trio companion that first travelled with the Doctor? That's Susan, the Doctor's granddaughter, and Ian and Barbara, her school teachers and that. What is very, very interesting about this combination is that the Doctor, at the very, very beginning, he is not a very, very nice sort of person. And then Ian and Barbara was people that actually helped him to become a great person, and Susan actually helped out as well. They really gave the Doctor a bit more understanding that. And during that era, it was a kids show, like pure kids show. But I loved all three of them in their own sort of way. You know, they had their own separate stories and that. I mean, you know, Susan had the Aztecs and that, and you know, Ian would be, you know, heroic though in certain sort of situations, like with the Daleks and that, doing things that he thought was right. And Susan was very, very smart and kind of like really intelligent in that. And I thought they were really, really good. And the pivotal point was, like I said, was the Edge of Destruction, when the Doctor finally started to understand about companions, and that's how we know him as the Doctor that he is though today. Though really, it's the very, very third story for anybody that's asking. At number 3, even though they had a short stint together, it was Elizabeth Sladen and Ian Marter playing as Sarah Jane Smith and Harry Sullivan, respectively. And I just loved it as well. I mean, they began teaming up though in Robot and that. And what I liked here is not only they work together, but they can work separately as well. And they really knew the chemistry of each other really well. You can see it in their performances when they work together and that. And also when they go off in their separate ways and that. You have Harry Sullivan, who's helping out the Doctor, you know, deal with the tough situations. And I love the Doctor just teasing him and that. And the same though with the Doctor with Sarah as well and that. And both of them together and that. I think they just made a really, really good strong force in that. Dealing with Daleks and Cybermen, and then finally dealing with the Zygons and that. I think it was just really wonderful stuff. It was a bit of a shame though that Ian Marter didn't get a proper goodbye though in the end though in Doctor Who though really. But you know, I think that the producers weren't thinking at the time, but you know, they kind of regretted that. I know that from watching the documentary. But I'll tell you what, he was great. I loved Ian Marter as an actor. I love Elizabeth Sladen. God bless them both, definitely, and they will both definitely be missed, definitely. At number 2, the ones that have just recently departed, Callan Gillian and Arthur Darvill, Amy Pond and Rory Williams. What can I say? To me, absolutely fantastic. My favourite ones of the multi-companions of the new series. I think they just gel brilliantly though with the Doctor. They help out the Doctor in many different ways. You have Amy, who's willing to be a bit more braver, and Rory, you know, you do anything, you know, just for love for Amy and that. And you can sort of see that if you have been watching the new series episodes. And also their performances are top notch in that. You know, they really gel with Matt Smith's Doctor perfectly in that, and they fit into Stephen Moffet's sort of design of Doctor Who. And I think they will definitely both be missed, you know, as companions, like past multi-companions or any sort of companion in that. And it's just absolutely wonderful just to see on the screen and that. Absolutely wonderful. So do go and check their stories out as well. And at number 1, I love this duo though from the second Doctor era. It was in fact Fraser Hines, who played as Jamie, and Wendy Harriet as Zoe. And I love this combination there. When they were joined with the Doctor, it was more like a family unit. They were like together like a bit of a family. Like you know, Jamie would be going at the Doctor, and the Doctor would be going, "Oh, quiet, Jamie," and all that sort of. And Zoe the same thing as well. He was like an uncle, that was like, "Oh, quiet, you," and all that sort of. But they worked so well together in that, and those two really helped Patrick Troughton really become something really special in that. And it was in Troughton's final year as well with the Doctor as well, and they still pulled out all the stops in that in every single story, even to the very end of War Games. I just absolutely loved Fraser Hines and Wendy Padbury. It was Wendy Padbury, yeah, Wendy Padbury as Zoe Harriet. I know I got it a bit wrong there. But yeah, they were just absolutely phenomenal. It was just really was quite cool. And that is my top 5 though of multi-companions with the Doctor. And thanks very much though for watching, and I will be back pretty soon. Take it easy though guys, and I'll be back though with another top 5 whenever it will be though guys. Take care and enjoy the rest of the show. Peace. Hello everyone, welcome to another Talking Who Top 5 with me, Barry Aldridge. It is good though to be back though doing another Top 5, and this time though I'm going to be doing a Top 5 on multi companions for the Doctor. In other words, it's not one companion, but it's more than one companion with the Doctor. So sometimes though the Doctor travelled with 2 companions, and then once or twice 3 companions, which I know it's kind of shocking, but it actually happened, and it happened quite a bit during the classic series, and it is happening though nowadays. So here we go. So here we are. Here's my top 5. At number 5, during the 9th Doctor.
Oops, I think we've gone round in a circle without noticing. Thanks, Barry. Anyway, so that's Barry's top 5 for this time, and there'll be another one.
What was your favourite team up?
My favourite team up.
On Doctor Who, what's your favourite team?
Well, I think Sarah Jane and
Sarah Jane and Harry.
Sarah Jane and Harry is definitely up there. And I do think I do think Peter Davison's teams had their moments.
I thought that Mark Strickson,
Tegan,
who played Tegan, Janet Fielding, and Peter Davison were, as actors, one of the best team ups. But I never felt the writers gave them sufficient. I mean, really sufficient material. I think in terms of the characters.
I think the dynamic was great, and I think Turlough's mystery just made him really interesting to be in there. And I think if, for instance,
it didn't work for me in the first season of Peter Davison when you had Adric and Nister. I felt they were both very bland.
Yeah, I think it's always difficult though. I guess when you've got they were kind of like the leftover from the previous stories, and it's like, well, how are they going to fit, because they weren't necessarily written with Peter Davison in mind, or but as far as going back to Turlough, if the Jenna Louise Coleman thing with Oswin is going to happen, again, you've got a bit more mystery around having a companion. It's not just.
Well, we'll just have to see how she's introduced.
A 21st century character from England.
We'll just have to see how she's introduced.
We will indeed. We will indeed. But anyway, let's talk about the finale of this season. This. Season.
And that kind of introduced the thing. Just to say, I felt kind of bookended with this season. You opened up with the ultimate classic Doctor Who villains, the Daleks, and we're closing with what have probably so far been the only successful new Doctor Who villains, the Weeping Angels.
Yes, because they've now been 3 or 4 stories.
Yes. And no other new Who monster is really.
I don't think,
except for a lesser extent, the Jadoon.
I don't think that they've necessarily had the same impact as they had since their first one.
Yeah.
But this one goes right back to, I think, the impact that they had in that first story, Blink.
Yeah.
And certainly brings back the terror of the Angels.
Yes.
In a much bigger way than I think we had them before, because they are extremely limited characters. I mean, they don't move. You're just talking about statues.
But the concept of them is very scary. That the second you don't look at them, this thing's gonna.
But putting them back on Earth in dark corners and things is where they belong.
It works. It
didn't work when they were in space. Somehow it just didn't feel right. They're just anachronistic. It's like they look like old Earth statues on a spaceship. It doesn't work, especially because spaceships have to be nice bright lighting and stuff, so it doesn't have the same kind of feeling. But you do have your classic River Song kind of thing. You've got the clues that are dropped in by River Song to keep luring the Doctor back into a particular story. They did have that gadget which I really hate, the Vortex manipulator. I really, really do hate.
Now that comes from Captain Jack.
It comes from Captain Jack, but still, to me, it was an invention that should never have happened. To me, the Doctor is special because he has the TARDIS. The TARDIS is special because it travels through space and time. When you can just have a bracelet that does the same thing, it just ruins the magic of what the Doctor and the TARDIS is all about.
The Daleks have technology that allows them to travel through space and time as well. But
Earth humans don't. Humans don't. And that's the point. You know, it's fine that the Daleks can do that. because they should be able to do that. You know, they are time warriors.
Is a Vortex manipulator? Do you think it's Magnus Greel technology?
I think that's the. I guess it is. That's the whole point. You know, it's he's the one who's inventing time travel for humans, and I guess it's perfected. But just a bracelet is wrong. It's just to be able to fit all that technology in just a bracelet that you can carry around. Where's the power source and all that kind of stuff? You know, we know there's incredible power.
Who would have thought that a computer, which would have taken up, I mean, just look at the computer the Master travelled around with in the Time Monster. These computers which were bigger than filing cabinets. And then everything that they could do could be put on a wafer-thin microchip. No bigger than the tip of your finger. You know, who knows what future technology has for us.
Indeed. But
although in terms of time travel, I kind of like go with what Stephen Hawking says. If time travel could be created by humankind, we would have been overrun with tourists from the future by now.
But if someone says to you, "I'm from the future, I'm a tourist," would you believe them? Or would you lock them in a cell saying, they're crazy, I tell you? But still, no, I mean, yes. Okay, so technology. But we all know that the Gallifrey and the Time Lords have always interfered when someone is close to creating that kind of technology. They don't want anyone else to have it, especially not humans who do go around colonising the entire galaxies.
The Time Lords aren't around anymore.
Well, Time Lords aren't around anymore. It's true. But anyway, we're digressing. We're digressing.
Is of Gallifreyan DNA.
We're digressing. Yes. But you know, if she had some kind of machine, it would make more sense than a bloody bracelet.
Yes.
Sorry, you know, it's just. Anyway, that's it.
Do you think Griver Song should have built herself a TARDIS?
Do I think she should have built herself a TARDIS? I don't think she should necessarily have what is a TARDIS. You know, I don't think it should necessarily be bigger on the inside. But you know, a time machine could be invented. You know, but it's just not going to be the bigger in the inside because that is Gallifreyan technology, which we do know the Daleks also have from the chase.
Yes, they
did actually have that as well. Yeah, but the Daleks, I think, will always be a special case. They can always, but they're allowed to catch up to Gallifreyan technology, but just because they're the Daleks.
That was actually supposed to be why the whole Time War started.
Yes. So anyway,
we're going back to the Angels in Manhattan.
Great period-looking piece.
Yes.
You know, New York. You know, the great accent, and what better way to have the angels than have the mother of all angels with the Statue of Liberty? But we're building up, of course, to the ending, and throughout the whole episode, you're kind of wondering how they're going to do it.
Do you think there's been too much of a build-up to this?
I think there was, and I think it's like when you put out news releases, oh, this is going to be the saddest one ever. You're just putting too much expectation. It's just like, why not just let people enjoy it and make up their own minds? Why are you telling people?
Or be shocked by it.
Or be shocked. Why?
We all knew it was going to end in tragedy.
Yes. Why tell that? Why say this? Why not just let ratings. Just let it play out?
Get ratings.
But people are going to watch anyway, I think.
They do everything they can to get an extra million
They know it's going to be the end. They know it's going to have weeping angels. They know they've already been told the Statue of Liberty is going to be one of them. You know, so you've got your hooks already. You don't have to keep it's going to be the saddest one. You're all going to cry. So don't tell people how they're supposed to feel. Let people discuss. Because I think also when you tell people how you should feel, there's almost going to be a bit of resistance as well.
I think you must have been sad. There must have been a tear in your eye, Elisar. I know you have a heart of stone, but you know this one time for Rory and Amy, you had a tear.
No, because
more of a tear than you had for Adric.
Oh, poor Adric. I think when you build it up so much, you almost then get to the point, it's like, well, get on with it then. What's going to, you know... I thought the double ending was actually done very well, actually, you know, from a script point of view. Aside from that, you know, you think it's ended, and then of course it hasn't. The director needed to keep an eye out on the fact that there were many times where they took their eyes off the angels and nothing seemed to happen, even though it was in the middle of tension scenes where actually, you know, for instance, the biggest one, of course, is Amy and Rory on the ledge. You know, they moved to a whole sequence where neither of them are looking at the Statue of Liberty, just so they could have a scene. But you know, they've been building up in the previous episode, Powerfully. They're building up, you know, the love that they have for each other, which ends up becoming far more important than their relationship with the Doctor. Yeah, and that's why it was a good ending, because it's like they've done all their running, they've done all their adventures, and actually it wasn't sad because they got what they wanted. What they wanted was just to sit at home, lie in bed, probably watching TV, whatever, reading books, and just be with each other. Yeah, that's what they were building up to, what they wanted. And so was it sad? Well, it's sad for the Doctor, but it's not sad for Amy and Rory, because actually they've told us from the previous episode, this is their ending, this is what they want, this is what they want. They want to sit on a couch, and they get to spend 60 years sitting on a couch, whatever it is. The guest stars, Mike McShane. What was that improv show we always used to watch? Whose Line Is Anyway? Yes. Great to see him back. Great actor. Was he in Jurassic Park? I can't remember. No, it wasn't him. He was in another.
You're confusing the guy from
Josh something or other. Yeah. But yeah, no, he was good.
He was in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, though.
He was in
he?
Yeah. Actually, he was on my plane when I was flying to LA. Actually.
Oh.
But production design, gorgeous. I mean, this is, you know, this looked like it had some money spent on it.
I think everything this season's looked like it had some money spent. I mean, Doctor Who at the moment, when you think about how it used to be, I mean, it really does feel like this is the flagship Doctor of BBC show at the moment.
Although that's called a midwife, I think, now.
Oh, well. Well, by flagship, I mean it's a show that they sell all around the world.
Absolutely, yeah.
You're not going to be having an American remake of Doctor Who. They will show Doctor Who, whereas they are remaking Call the Midwife.
Yeah. Brad Renfro says, the Statue of Liberty being an angel doesn't really make sense, since the statue is actually not made of stone.
Well. Did Rory get the send-off he deserved?
From the
what
Gallifrey
do you
Times.
think, Gallifrey
What do you think?
Times?
Yeah, so tell us what you think. I mean, the Statue of Liberty as an angel, you know, it's kind of fun, the idea, but yeah, can Statue of Liberty actually walk around New York without being noticed?
Yeah.
I mean, that is a question.
Only walks around New York and people aren't looking at it.
But when you're that size, how can people not notice you?
Yeah.
So yeah, it doesn't. I mean, yeah, that didn't make sense, but did it really matter? Oh dear, I don't know. I don't think it mattered for this particular purpose. I mean, you know, hey, it has a Statue of Liberty has big teeth, you know, scary teeth. Actually, what was the scariest, of course, is the angel cherubs. No, they were scary. Gallifrey Times, I think, is agreeing with me on the whole Vortex manipulator. It does kind of ruin the idea of the TARDIS.
Well, anyway, that's the first half of the season. What do you think? What do you want to see in the next half?
Actually, you know, just going back briefly.
All right, yeah.
Power of Three, it was great, and again, this is something that New Who hasn't done enough of. But there was a great scene, obviously, when the Doctor takes Amy and Rory to the Savoy, and they dress up.
Yeah.
Whereas in the previous episode, going into the Western town, they just wore their regular clothes. Don't you think they should have dressed up? the companions, because the companions have always traditionally dressed up wherever possible.
Well, I always love
just
it,
to
though.
blend in.
I always love it when the companions dress up, but the Doctor doesn't. And I do love that about the Doctor. Is this guy who turns up in any time wearing what he always wears,
and with the exception of Christopher Eccleston's Ninth Doctor, his clothes are so odd.
Yeah.
That they're almost timeless anyway, and they don't necessarily fit into any time.
The whole point of what they did with Christopher Eccleston's costume when they brought him in was he's supposed to be look like he was supposed to be in hard leather, because it's supposed to be like he's ready for a fight.
Yeah.
He's just come out of the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do always think they're supposed.
Amy and Rory should have been in costumes. They should have been in costumes.
Maybe for that one, but I can't actually really think of Rory dressing up that much lately, actually. I always just imagine
he only dresses up as a Roman.
As a Roman. And that's only for kinky purposes.
But even if he was dressed as a Roman, it would still make more sense.
Yes.
But anyway, we had a little brief glimpse of course, of Jenna Louise in the end of that scene.
Yes.
in costume.
Yeah.
Would look like Victorian costume. So another Victorian Christmas special.
Well, every Christmas,
there is a sort of Christmas Victorian kind of thing, isn't there?
Stephen Moffat, far more than Russell T Davies, really plays the Christmas card. Russell T Davies would do a typical Doctor Who story, which had Christmas trappings in it. So you had the robotic Santa Clauses or the robotic angels or something like that. Whereas the last two Christmas specials from Stephen Moffat have been, one's been basically a remake of A Christmas Carol, and the other one was a remake of The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. So, I can very much see him taking a popular Christmas tale and respinning it on a Doctor Who. And I always have felt that Stephen Moffat's Christmas episodes are far more for, the casual viewer who doesn't necessarily watch Doctor Who on a regular basis, but will sit down and watch the Christmas episode.
The Christmas one,
rather than...
It's fun.
Yes.
It's all about fun.
And I think what we'll get is a story which will not affect... It'll introduce the new companion, but I don't think it's going to be influenced or will influence continuity that much, other than that it's the companion. I think it'll be a good traditional Christmas romp.
Yeah.
I don't know, with the Victorian setting, it makes me wonder, will it be a bit of a ghost story or something like that? They're always popular at Christmas.
If Jenna Louise is playing a whole new character, just to screw our minds that she was in the other one, in Asylum of Daleks, would you be disappointed?
No, not necessarily, provided that a proper explanation is given. Like, this is Jenna Louise. She is playing one of her ancestors, or that there's some specific reason why, or he's got her before she goes on this mission. That because they have established that the Doctor can change time, so it could be before this happens to her. If it just is a character that looks like her, that will be a bit of a disappointment.
Would you be excited if it was the same character and she escaped from the asylum?
I would. It would be very bizarre.
Have a human Dalek.
It would be bizarre if she could turn into a Dalek at any point. That would be a kind of bizarre.
Well, they need to blast through a wall or something because they're trapped, and he doesn't have his sonic.
It's kind of like, this is Sarah Jane and K9 all in one. It's that would be a bit peculiar, but. Who knows? I mean, Russell T Davies always likes to do the kind of
Stephen Moffat.
But Stephen Moffat likes to go for the more interesting. One thing I've noticed about Stephen Moffat.
if you want Jenna Louise to actually be Oswin the Dalek, or if you want her to, you think she should be a separate character.
What have I noticed about Stephen Moffat? He likes to play with time. Yes. He loves to play with the which has never really. I think the only Doctor Who story which played with time prior to Stephen Moffat was The City of Death, and even though he's a time traveller, it's just the time aspect. It gets the Doctor to the start of the story and allows him to leave at the end. Stephen Moffat likes to mess about with time, whether it's Madame Pompadour or River Song. He loves to mess around with timelines, so we could very much be seeing with her character a mess around with time. He doesn't like to take the obvious. I mean, he must be a fascinatingly intelligent man, fierce ideas. he really does come up with stuff that comes left of centre. You have no idea where he's coming from. And the other thing that I've noticed about Stephen Moffat is he certainly likes female companions with great legs, and he has no problems with showing them, and that's why I love him as a producer. Just
had a direct message from Louise Jameson, actually.
Oh, right.
But on a completely different subject. She's just saying, thanks, it was fun to do, in reply to me tweeting her saying that I was looking forward to seeing her episode of The Vessel, which is a new British web series that she stars in. Which you can see the trailer on thevesselseries.com, and you'll see a quick...
And I also wanted to quickly say, today's a bit of a special day as well, not to do with Doctor Who, but for our other show, those video guys, which we're not actually doing tonight. But it would have actually, it's a special day I would have wanted to have mentioned if we're doing those video guys, in that Dr. Horrible's sing-along blog is airing on the CW channel on television. And that's a huge thing, on that a web series has been picked up to show on television.
Yeah.
So, you know,
which means that we've got far more chance now of getting that finally getting the sequel getting made.
The sequel getting made is, the sequel's always going to get made, except that Neil Patrick Harris is doing. He's busy. Doing that horrible comedy show he does.
It's a brilliant comedy show. I will not hear you say it's horrible.
Nathan Fillion is doing Castle.
Yeah.
And Joss Whedon is basically taken over Marvel comic books. And it's basically
and Felicia Day has to get a new episode of all her different shows that she's producing every single day of the week,
and
on her Geek and Sundry.
What's it? Well, Felicia Day, is she going to be in the new Dr. Horrible blog? But Dr. Horrible's blog got made because Hollywood was paralysed by the writers' strike, and they weren't all doing anything. They were all free. Now it's just basically a case of scheduling it, and even actually Joss Whedon is directing and writing it. The two people who co-wrote the songs with him, his brother Jed Whedon and Marissa Tancharoen, they are the producers of the new S.H.I.E.L.D. TV series that Joss Whedon is writing and directing.
Even behind the scenes, they're all busy.
And other rumours. Segueing even further from Doctor Who, how do you feel of the rumour that apparently they've announced that joining the lineup for Avengers 2 will be Miss Marvel, and they're talking about either Emily Blunt or the actress whose name I can't remember, who's in Luther.
Right.
There's actually two British actresses they're talking about for this very American superhero.
Ms. Marvel's one of my favourites of the Avengers, and it's actually one of the only ones of. I mean, I'll read the Avengers comics.
Yes.
But only Ms. Marvel is the one that I've actually bothered reading as on her solo titles.
Yes.
But to me, Ms. Marvel's most interesting because of her whole history with the X-Men and Rogue.
Yes.
And of course, you're not going to have that in this universe, because the X-Men are in a different universe with Fox. So so then you're really talking about, I guess, a Ms. Marvel version from prior to that, because we're all familiar with the post X-Men Rogue Ms. Marvel, more so because I don't think many people would have read the Ms. Marvel of the 1970s.
I have to say, normally when I hear rumours like this, you take it with a pinch of salt, but I do think we are going to have, like they did with the X-Men movies and stuff like that. I think with the Avengers, they will want to introduce one or two new Avengers each film. And Miss Marvel, I would have thought, would be the most obvious choice, because really you've only got Black Widow in terms of the female Avengers, and you want a strong and other female Avengers.
Again, the problem with characters is that you have to find not just the balance of male-female, but what their powers are.
Oh yeah.
And Ms. Marvel is essentially a powerhouse.
Oh yes. But they're going up against Thanos.
Yes.
Who is one of the most powerful. He's a character who, in the Infinity Gauntlet, basically was playing with the entire universe like it was a toy.
I mean, what they really need is not necessarily Miss Marvel, but the Miss Marvel who became binary in the Avengers, which is the interstellar version.
Yeah. Well, they are doing before the Avengers as a Guardian of the Galaxy movie, and I'm wondering if the Miss Marvel character may be introduced
and becomes binary.
And I'm wondering you know, will the Avengers film just be the Avengers battling Thanos, or will Rocket Raccoon and the rest of the Nova and the Guardians of the Galaxy...
This is going to be so interesting, I think, Guardians of the Galaxy, because suddenly you're going to have this big Marvel movie set in space with which are going to be characters that, for the majority of even Marvel fans, are not familiar with.
And one of them is a raccoon.
And one of them is a talking raccoon. You stand that up into the Iron Man universe, you're going to think, Iron Man, gadgets, everything, talking raccoon. You're going to think, how is this going to work? How are they going to do this? It's really bizarre, and it's going to be... But, you know, talk to any Marvel fan, and I bet you most of them have not even read Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah. You know, I haven't. I've read a few Thanos comics, but I haven't read Guardians of the Galaxy.
Guardians of the Galaxy is very much what you'd refer to as like a cult.
Yes, it is.
Marvel one, and it's one of the ones who, if I heard they were doing like a $5 or $10 million movie, you go, it's on the level of Kick-Ass, and if a Judge Dredd movie couldn't scratch the box office, it's kind of...
It's going to be really... And it's really brave of Marvel to do it, I think.
Do you know what would be also interesting, though?
It's Marvel, a shame they can't get the Silver Surfer in. Because obviously that's, again, essential for me, for Thanos, is to have a Silver Surfer. But he's tied up with the Fantastic Four franchise with Fox.
What I think would be very interesting, and they're obviously not doing it because they're calling it Waves, and this is Wave 2. What I'd love to see them do in, say, their Wave 3... is if they did a Doctor Strange movie and did a Namor the Submariner movie, and then after that, not an Avengers film, but if you came out with a Defenders movie of Doctor Strange, the Hulk, and Namor
and the Beast. But they can't have the Beast, unfortunately. But there was obviously that rumour that with Fox coming to the very close to the end of their licence, their option on Fantastic Four, that if they wanted to get...
They've already started work on the next film. The whole thing is that apparently they're very close to the option running out. What I find...
And there was going to be some haggling where Marvel was going to give them that option to continue, but give them back Galactus and the Silver Surfer.
Well, that would be interesting, although...
Because Guardians of the Galaxy with Galactus in it would be very interesting.
This will frustrate you. That this shows you how stupid sometimes the film companies are. When they did the Hulk movie, not the Ang Lee version, but the Edward Norton version of the Hulk,
the Avengers version.
Yes, when he goes to the university to meet the professor who becomes the leader at the end of the movie, they wanted that university to be the same university from Spider-Man. And that when he's walking down the university corridor, they wanted a cameo with no dialogue of Peter Parker and Kurt Connors walking down the corridor. And Sony Pictures said no way. And then in the Avengers, they wanted a cameo of Andrew Garfield seeing all the Chitauri and going, oh, Spider-Man up, and then web-slinging a couple of them as if Spider-Man's getting in. And Sony again said, no way. Which is kind of like, I think, kind of really sad.
It is sad. It is sad, yeah.
But yeah, apparently the Fantastic Four is coming, but they are apparently... There is a script in the works, and the only casting I've heard is apparently Bruce Willis as the Thing, or as the voice of a CGI thing,
yeah.
And Stephen Moyer as Doctor Doom. That's all I've heard on the casting so far. Whereas Emily Blunt as Miss Marvel, I could believe Marvel wanting her for that because she was the first choice for Black Widow.
TARDIS Impala says, what was the name of the short-time Avenger that was a mutant girl who could create fire? I can never remember, but she was pretty awesome. I'd like to see her. I think it's Firestar.
Firestar, she wasn't a member of the Avengers. That was Firestar was Spider-Man and Friends, wasn't it?
She was in Spider-Man and Friends, and then briefly, I think, in X-Men and maybe the Avengers. I don't know.
can't really think of anybody else with some girl like that who was.
Gallifrey Time says we're getting a bit carried away with the non-Who talk. Well, that's because
I know, because we're geeks.
We're geeks, yes. And I guess we sort of like to.
Well, here's an interesting. Let's get back another thing for Doctor Who, which I'd love to hear people's thoughts on. Matt Smith is being interviewed, and he says in an interview, "I would love for Doctor Who to go and film an episode in New Zealand. It's a great location. Wouldn't it be great to go do some filming in New Zealand?" The next day, a statement is put out by Stephen Jackson, Peter Jackson, probably the biggest director in the world, saying, "If Doctor Who comes and films in New Zealand, I will direct the episode for you."
I don't think the BBC could afford a Peter Jackson directed episode of Doctor Who.
I think Peter Jackson. I don't think the cost of Peter Jackson is the problem. He's a fan. He would do it for. The problem would be, but they said the earliest they could do it is 2014.
Yeah. You know what? Why not? They do one in New Zealand. You know.
I think the idea of Peter Jackson directing and segueing.
It would have to be a two-parter.
Segueing into other to show what a fan Peter Jackson is of Doctor Who. The first choice for Gandalf in Lord of the Rings was Tom Baker, but he turned it down on the basis of, "I've had 3 divorces, and if I go off to New Zealand to film a film for 3 or 4 years, I'll have a 4th divorce." The second choice was Sean Connery, who turned it down, and then it was Ian McKellen, who made cinematic history with it.
Peter Jackson got his wish in the end, and he did get Sylvester McCoy
and then
in The Hobbit.
The other story is,
which is very exciting,
that on the first when the cast flew over to New Zealand on the first day of the table read, Peter Jackson took them all out for dinner at his house, and then at the end they went for drinks in his living room, and he said, "Oh, by the way, Mr. McCoy, this may be familiar to you," and he walks into the Peter Jackson's living room, where in a glass case is his original costume.
The original
7th Doctor costume.
Oh, I wonder what auction he got that one in.
Apparently Peter Jackson has a massive collection of original Doctor Who props and costumes.
Fantastic. Doctor Who Media says there's already a petition on it for Peter Jackson.
Peter Jackson said he'll do it. They just have to film it in, so long as they do it in New Zealand, in his home country of New Zealand, he will do it. And you said he's too expensive. He would do it at Union.
I'm sure
rates,
he probably would, just for the
as
chance.
a fan.
Yeah. Anyway, so what have we got coming up? Well, of course, is the big convention, Midnight, in December. Tell us, any news?
There's no real more news to tell from what we said last time, except the event is getting really close to about sold out. It's about 85% of the tickets have currently gone for the tickets, and this is the second. I run a convention organisation, Star Fury, and this is going to be the second Doctor Who event we've run. The last one we had Matt Smith as a guest, along with a whole host of other 11th Doctor Who related guests, including Neve McIntosh, Francis Barber,
Simon
Fisher-Becker. We had a whole selection of 11th Doctor Who related guests. This one is more Russell T Davies area themed, as we welcome David Tennant to a convention, and for her first ever convention appearance, Billie Piper. And along with those two, we've also got Eve Miles and Gareth Lloyd David from Torchwood, and we've got Tony Lee, who writes the IDW, or used to write the IDW comic. We've got Jim Swallow, who writes for Big Finish and has written several Doctor Who novels, as well as Stargate novels, and has written episodes of Star Trek Voyager. We've got Gary Russell, who's a Doctor Who episode. We've got a whole host of exciting guests. There will be, I keep on having people saying to me, are there more guests? Because Billie Piper and David Tennant obviously aren't enough for them. But a lot of people asking. Basically what I'm doing is I'm waiting until closer to the event itself, because tickets are selling. I don't need to announce more guests to sell the tickets. It's going to sell out. So, but sometimes there are those guests who don't like to commit in advance. So I feel if I wait until a month before the event, I can get better names than if I'm trying to, because I don't need them for advertising purposes. I just need them at the event itself. So that way we'll probably get 3 or 4 more guests in, but by leaving it to the last minute to book them, we can get some more exciting names for the event. And it's going to be 3 days, 14th, 15th and 16th of December at the Birmingham Hilton Hotel, and there's going to be guest talks, autograph sessions, photo sessions, get an opportunity to have your photo taken. There'll be David Tennant, Billy Piper and you in the middle. How exciting is that for any Doctor Who fan? All wedged between Eve Miles and Gareth Lloyd David.
If you're a Torchwood fan.
Perfect for any Torchwood fan, although they both have been on Doctor Who.
They have, indeed.
Yes.
They have.
And in the evenings there'll be parties. We've got one or two other. There's something going on in terms of some video screenings I'm working on at the moment that I'm not allowed to talk about, but it'll be very exciting if it all comes up. Well, it is coming off, but I'm just not allowed to discuss it. It will be very exciting, and above all, it's a great way to spend a weekend with fellow Doctor Who fans. You'll make some fantastic new friends. You'll exchange lots of gossip. Have an opportunity to have a bit of a drink, have a bit of a party, watch cosplayers and have a lot of fun.
Cool.
You can get all the details about the event at starfury.co.uk. Go to that website, all the details there, the guest lineup. You can buy tickets online. We've got a video on there from our past event which gives you an idea of what to expect. But if you haven't bought a ticket, as I say, 85% of the tickets have gone. So if you haven't bought a ticket, I'd say you need to do so within the next 2 or 3 weeks.
There you go. Cool.
You're looking forward to it? Elisar will be there.
I'm looking forward to it.
Hosting a few guest talks with the internet sensation Blog to Who will also
and I can't
be
wait
along.
For that. Good. And there will be a lot of fun. And I can tell you guys, it is, I mean, there is no experience like it. If you've been to signing shows in the past, it's a different experience.
With a signing show, which a lot of the fans kind of like initially like the idea of, because you think it's only £10 to get into,
and you meet so many
whereas
people.
This one's £90 to get into, but this one is £90 to get into, and if you don't want to spend any more money, you don't have to pay anything else for any of it. Whereas
because
if
you do get an autograph.
Yes. Whereas at the signing show, you turn up and you have to pay between £15 to up to £45. That's how much it was for David Tennant when he did a signing show, £45 to get their autograph. But then, after you've got their autographs, you see them do a guest talk up on stage for an hour, and then we encourage the guests. We can't actually contractually make them do it, but we do encourage the guests to hang out at the bar and at the parties. And at the last event, Neve McIntosh, Simon Fisher-Becker, Mark Shepherd, Morgan Shepherd and Simon Fisher-Becker, they were at the parties every night.
I think Mark Shepherd was already in the bar hanging out with people before he'd even registered.
Oh, he was there.
He had even arrived with you guys.
He was there Thursday night. Him and his dad were in the bar with anybody who turned up a bit early.
And you are absolutely happy to chat to anyone.
Yeah.
Very nice people, and it's a good vibe. But what you'll most get out of it is really meeting other fans, because we all know each other from Twitter and Twitter handles, but you end up meeting each other face to face and actually developing a lot of friendships. So it's really worth it from that, and I really recommend you guys going. Just to finish off with some more 3-word reviews about this series from Twitter. At Slughorn42 says it was epic and heartbreaking. At TBC Law says death and dinosaurs. Dr_Enzo says please get better. Zyton_7 says bye bye ponds. At Cheesy Feet 9 just heartbreaking. At Paul_Bowler just want more. At J4Jock, I love it. At Preachers Podcast, mad, exciting, different. And finally, at Big Mother Trucker 7, love is timeless.
So that's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from Broton. So we'll see you at the next Talking Who, which will probably be the beginning of November.
Yeah,
we'll have the details up on Twitter.
Probably November the 7th, but keep tuned on
What we can
Twitter.
do at that one is we can talk about upcoming gossip, news and information, and plus we can maybe discuss.
We can catch up on some DVD releases we haven't
really reviewed. The Ambassadors of Death, Planets of Giants, and The Claws of Axos is being re-released in the next week or so.
Well, there'll be a classic special next time.
And the big news is Sharda's coming out soon at Christmas.
Is it?
As well.
I didn't hear that one.
Yes, Sharda's coming out.
What have they done? to it?
Apparently, they've done nothing.
It's just missing scenes.
They've said that they've said they feel you shouldn't. It should always be a lost story. So there's a documentary. And the missing the scenes with huge gaps in them.
I was never able to get the VHS because that was one of the ones that disappeared very quickly.
You can watch it.
Became
on YouTube. You can YouTube it. And there's going to be a document, and there's going to be 30 Years in a TARDIS documentary.
Right,
going to be
which
as well.
Yeah,
but we'll see you at the next one.
Cheers.